I'm Ellis Martin, and this is the Ellis Martin Report and Money Talk Radio. Join me now for a very interesting conversation with Dr. Moutih Rafei, Chief Science Officer of Defence Therapeutics, trading on the CSE as DTC and in the U.S. on the OTC as DTCFF. Defence Therapeutics is a publicly traded biotechnology company working on engineering the next generation vaccines and ADC products using its proprietary platform. The core of Defence Therapeutics' platform is the ACCUMTM technology, which enables precision delivery of vaccine antigens, or ADCs, in their intact form to target cells. As a result, increased efficacy and potency can be reached against catastrophic illness such as cancer and infectious diseases. Dr. Rafei is an immuno-oncologist and has accumulated profound knowledge and insight in the fields of T-cell development, stem cell biology, cancer immunotherapy, and autoimmune diseases. With a PhD in experimental medicine at McGill University in the laboratory of Jacques Galipeau, Dr. Rafei is a leader in the development of immune-related therapies for catastrophic illnesses, and his research has uncovered many seminal discoveries. Dr. Rafei received over 20 awards and recognitions over the last 15 years. His research has resulted in over 20 high-impact peer-reviewed publications, 5 reviews, 2 book chapters, 1 monograph, and 5 patents. Moutih, welcome to the program. It's great to visit with you today.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation.
Tell us about Defence Therapeutics.
Yes, with pleasure. Defence Therapeutics is a publicly traded Canadian biotech company that is developing the next generation therapies for the immuno-oncology space as well as infectious diseases. So the company basically is focused on the Accum platform, which stands for the accumulator, which has one simple purpose initially, which is to break down the endosomal structures in a cell to allow better bioaccumulation of any biomedicine that you would like to introduce in a cell. It could be an antibody, could be an RNAi, mRNA vaccination, could be an antigen. Anything that you wish to accumulate in a cell could be actually driven there in a specific way using the Accum platform. So this is where Defense is actually being distinctive compared to other companies in the field.
Does Accum work in concert with every drug therapy?
That's a great question. In fact, I'll tell you a little story about Defense and how it started, and then you'll understand a little bit more how this thing went along. So initially, when Defense was created in 2017, the main objective of the company was to apply Accum to antibody drug conjugates, because these are not drugs, but rather biologics that every single pharmaceutical company is interested in. So these are antibodies that have payloads, which could be chemotherapeutic agents. And what happens is that these antibodies will go bind a marker on a cell surface, and then through a process of uptake or endocytosis, the product then is released in the cell where the chemotherapeutic agent can kill cancer cells. So initially, Accum was thought to be strictly adaptable to the ADC field, but after that, we quickly realized that we can apply the same principle for antigens, for example, proteins that you like to vaccinate against. You could use it for RNAi, which is pretty popular in the pharmaceutical industry. You could use it for the delivery of mRNA vaccines, which everybody's aware of because of the pandemic. You could use it to deliver any protein like CRISPR, which is something that a lot of scientists, it's a technology that a lot of scientists use to edit the genome. So if I may say, the limit in this case is the sky, because Accum could be used with every single entity that you wish to introduce in a cell. Just the field of ADCs, you've got hundreds of those in development every year. Antigen for vaccination, you've got unlimited number of proteins you can use. You could basically use it with anything. The only molecules we have not at the moment investigated the use of Accum with are small drugs, small molecules like small chemical entities, because these have a distinct mode of uptake or absorption in target cells.
I noticed that there are prophylactic applications of the drug. How do you determine who's a candidate for, let's say, pancreatic cancer or cervical cancer, or pick your cancer? Are you administering the vaccine to individuals that may, according to your research, possibly get that kind of cancer?
Yeah, this is a great question. So, in fact, usually when we're talking about cancer vaccination, the first thing to keep in mind is that the FDA is always interested in therapeutic vaccination more than prophylactic, simply because the problem is out there, the patients are suffering, so we need to really treat those patients as soon as possible with whatever we have out there that could work and save their lives. After that, prophylactic vaccination is actually the number one objective that every single cancer scientist or immunologist immuno-oncologist is working towards, because it's always better to basically protect than have to treat. And at the moment, the problem we're facing in the field of cancer immunotherapy is that we don't have any tumor-specific antigens that have been identified that could be shared by most of the population that we can target in order to really protect patients from any future cancer. And that's why we say we have to use personalized cancer vaccination, because every patient is different and every tumor is different. So even if you take, for example, 10 breast cancer patients, even though they're suffering from the same tumor type, every single tumor is different because it's coming from the genetic background of that specific individual or patient. So at the moment, developing prophylactic vaccination for cancer is quite difficult. It's not the same thing as, let's say, talking about infectious diseases where we're all facing the same agent. We know that we're going to be infected with the same viral capsid that contains specific amounts or numbers of proteins. Having said that, the situation is a bit different when it comes to, for example, cervical cancer, because cervical cancer is caused by a viral agent, which is the human papillomavirus. So, as you know, Gardasil 9 is the only prophylactic vaccine that is given against cervical cancer. But here we have to be very careful, because Gardasil 9 is not an anti-cancer vaccine, it's an antiviral vaccine. So, it's there to protect from the viral infection that is known to cause cervical cancer. Having said that, Defense has developed a very, very interesting dual-acting vaccine, which I should definitely call cancer vaccine, because it's based on one single oncogene derived from cervical cancer that you could use to protect from the onset of cancer, cervical cancer, or treat patients that already have cervical cancer. So it's both a prophylactic and a therapeutic vaccine. So that could be a great first-grade candidate for prophylactic vaccination, because we know that a lot of girls will have eventually to take Gardasil 9, so why not take our Accum E7 vaccine? Now, to come back to your one part of your question, how do we basically predict who's a good candidate for prophylactic vaccination? Today, there are multiple tests we can do at the genetic level to really see if there are specific mutations that will make these patients develop ovarian cancer, breast cancer. We'll look at the family history and we'll able to predict these things. And eventually, when Defense is going to be focusing on endeavor to really find a prophylactic vaccine, we'll be really going after these first cohorts to demonstrate proof of efficacy before eventually jumping on other kinds of cancers.
You mentioned on your website that you are a platform technology, which means you'll work in concert with other drug therapies. But is this something you're going to make available to other drug companies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is the whole business model of Defense. The way I see the Accum technology is that this is an enabling technology. So it's a technology that you could use with, as I mentioned earlier, any kind of biomolecule you can think of. Every single pharmaceutical industry has an antibody drug conjugate in development, and all of those, with no exception, will have to face endosomal entrapment, which is basically trapping or sequestering the product into these structures that we call the endosomes, which I always make the analogy with the stomach, right? So we eat something, the stomach eventually will have an acidity that will be increased, that will basically degrade the product so that we can absorb the nutrients in our organism. So the same thing happens with these endosomes. They trap the product, they degrade it, and then the chemotherapeutic agent is actually trapped. And only 1 to 5% of those will eventually make it outside of the endosome. So what we're trying to really work as a model here is to show that the Accum technology could make their ADCs improve by 50, 60, 80, 100 folds. And I have evidence to prove that. First of all, we have a collaboration with a European company that already has an ADC in phase 1 trial. And they came to us when they saw our talks, our presentations, our slide decks. They told us, look, we've got this second ADC that we've developed. It's great. But the problem is we need to inject mega doses in order to really have a meaningful therapeutic response. And when I asked what are the doses that you guys are using, they said 60 milligram per kilo. Now, any ADC usually would work between 1 and 5 milligram per kilo. So they were way beyond the normal range of ADC usage. So when we started applying the Accum platform on their ADC, we were able to lower the dose required to have potent therapeutic efficacy by 60 times. So we were able to reach the normal range of an ADC that is working normally. So what does that imply? It implies that if you're already taking something that is on the market, for example, Kadcyla or Enhertu, which are against breast cancer, these are usually giving over a very long treatment regimen. It can go up to 6, 12 weeks. That means the patient has to come in once, twice, or 3 times a week to get the dosing. So basically, if you can make this ADC much better, you could then diminish the number of injections, lower the concentrations, so the regimen becomes shorter, and that will have a magnificent impact on the toxicity profile of the ADC. So this is just an example showing that yes, we can apply it to any ADC out there, an ADC that is already on the market, an ADC that has clinical issues, an ADC that has failed phase 2 because of dosing or bioaccumulation reasons. We could also apply it for antigen vaccination. We've got examples demonstrating that bioconjugate the Accum on, let's say, the spike protein. We actually were developing a COVID vaccine during the pandemic, and there we developed a vaccine that generated a very huge antibody titer compared to mRNA vaccines. We've developed another protein-based vaccine, so we can use it with any kind of antigen. Same thing, one time we were in a meeting and Novartis approached us and they told us, you know what, if you guys can make your product work with RNAi, that would be beautiful, because 99% of those interfering RNA molecules, once they are delivered to cancer cells, they get trapped. So only 1% of those actually make it to the cytosol. So yes, it's a platform. It could be applicable to any protein, any antibody, any ADC. And we have also means playing with these small molecules, the Accum, because it has 2 components, and come up with molecules that have anti-cancer properties on their own. And that's one of the leading projects we have in the company right now.
I saw the words, and I'm paraphrasing here, curing cancer or cure for cancer or cancer cure on your website. And I think we need to parse that a little bit. Are we prophylactically preventing cancer? Are we therapeutically treating cancer once it's there? Does that mean it's the cure? Or will you ultimately be able to, through your platform technology, help, notice I use the word help, to cure cancer down the road?
There are always 2 hats out there. There's the marketing hat and there's the scientific hat, right? So if I have to talk from a marketing hat point of view, I would say, yes, we're on our way to really develop revolutionary medicine to be able to really cure patients, right? So that's the hoped for outcome of any company out there. If I had to be more critical of technology and whatnot, and to be really, really, really solid on my interpretation, to be able to say we cure cancer, it means the tumor has to go away, which we have already achieved with our preclinical data. We saw animals with pre-established tumors where the tumors are all gone. But what we have to be careful about is what happens in 10 years from now. Is the tumor coming back? Is there any relapse? So if the relapse occurs, then we have to be careful about using the word curing cancer, because curing means the tumor is gone, it's gone forever. Having said that, we have also to bear in mind that there is something called secondary tumors. So these are tumors that are not related to the primary tumor. They're different. They could come up because of genetic predispositions and whatnot. But in general, what we've been seeing with our preclinical models, at least with the cancer vaccine approach, is that we're able, in a combination therapy with those immune checkpoints, to really see complete responses in animals where tumors are gone by day 40 and the animals are actually tumor free. So it's very hard at the moment to make the extrapolation from animal to human. But what I can say is that if we use the right tools, if we can basically combine standard of care with our vaccine, with the immune checkpoints that are on the market, there is a pretty good chance that some of these patients will see their tumors cured.
How are we treating a cancer that's very hard to detect and often turns into stage 3 or stage 4 cancer? I'm talking about pancreatic cancer. Is that something that can be hypothetically treated with the Accum technology?
That's an excellent question you're raising here. And this is basically one of our mandate. Our mandate is to really go after those hard to treat cancers. Now, the standard way of treating cancer is what we call standard of care. It's a combination of chemotherapy with surgery, with radiation to really remove the bulk of the tumor. So of course, once you have the bulk of the tumor in your hand, that's easy for us to basically make a vaccine out of it, because that's what we need to really build the arm X vaccine. So once we have that, the idea there is to really give our therapeutic vaccine in order to really generate an immune response or T cells. These are white blood cells that will go seek and destroy those tumor cells. So the idea is once you generate the vaccine, you've got some of those 5 to 10% of hitting cancer cells in the body that we cannot really detect with standard approaches. So the idea now is that the immune system that was stimulated by the tumor vaccine would be able to finish the job. And if we do that, then yes, there is a big chance. The only problem is these patients that are stage 3 or stage 4, that means basically that you've got generic metastasis. So the tumor has migrated everywhere in the body, and that becomes pretty hard to treat. So the only way for us to really go after these tumors or metastases is through the immune system, through immunotherapy. So in combination with vaccination approach, we could use the immune checkpoints that are out there that were initially designed for these indications or these hard to treat patients. But at the moment, unfortunately, these patients don't survive. Pancreatic cancer patients, unfortunately, once they have that cancer at stage 3 or 4, it's a death sentence. Same thing could be for glioblastoma. So same thing could be for any kind of cancer that is late stage. So the idea really is to stimulate the immune system because that's the only system that has access to the entire body. It's the only system that can basically go after every single cell and destroy it until the last one.
What's the potential revenue stream for? What type of market are we looking at now?
That's a great question. In fact, every one of those topics I spoke about has billions and billions and billions of dollars in terms of potential revenues. For example, one single drug, one single ADC could be generating $2, $3, $4 billion in revenues. Let aside the fact that we're developing a cancer vaccine. Let aside that we're developing Accutux as a small molecule that is injected directly in the tumor. The market for defense at the moment is gigantic. This is not a company that is based on one molecule, one target, one indication. It's really a platform that can hit on different indications, different verticals. So really, I mean, it's hard for me to give you a number, but I can say that every one of those markets, like in the billions in terms of revenues eventually.
Well, that's fair. Is this a company that could be taken out someday, or will you just continue to build revenue and grow over time until you reach a large market cap, which might be very good for potential investors right now?
Yeah. So if you were to ask me this question, I would say, I'm trying to build the next Genentech. I'm trying to build the next big biotech pharma company that could really lead the field in terms of treatments. Having said that, because of the high versatility of the compound that we have with the platform that we're working with, Defense is actually looking for different scenarios or business models. So yes, we would love to develop 1 or 2 products on ourselves. For example, the ARM-X cancer vaccine is one of our most interesting and innovative product that we're trying to really develop by our own. But if there is, let's say, a pharma that has an ADC that they want to really optimize, then they could reach Defense and obtain a license to have this molecule only applied for their own ADC. If we're developing, for example, the Accutux is a small drug that is injectable in tumor, that could be sold eventually after phase 1, after it's been de-risked, as most of the deals are done in the pharmaceutical industry. Of course, I mean, a big company can come and say, look, I'm really, really interested to that platform. I'd like to buy the whole thing, but that comes with a big, I want to say 8, 9, 10 zeros as a check because the platform is really, 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 really good. So this is a platform that can go in so many different ways. It will have a great impact on so many different programs. I should say the company is quite open to a lot of different options, but we always have this idea in our mind that we would like to have 1 or 2 products developed by Defense with multiple other products that could be sold or in a partnership situation, or even having, let's say, a licensing agreement for specific indications.
And how are you financed for all that you have to do, let's say, in the next year or 2?
Well, currently Defense is a publicly traded company, so we're trading on the Canadian Stock Exchange, the OTC QB Exchange, as well as the Frankfurt Exchange. We are looking forward to be listed on NASDAQ in 2025, specifically after completing the phase 1 trial. But the company right now is attracting a lot of attention, especially in Europe, with so many banks, which I cannot really disclose the name at the moment. Lots of investors and bankers in Germany, Switzerland, the UK that are quite interested in financing the next phase 1 trials that we are looking to initiate early next year. So yeah, it's a mix between investments and, of course, public trading.
Dr. Moutih Rafei, Chief Science Officer of Defence Therapeutics. Thank you so much for joining me today in the program. Let's talk again soon, please, shall we?
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation as well, and looking forward to our next discussion.
I've been speaking with Dr. Moutih Rafei, Chief Science Officer of Defence Therapeutics, trading on the CSE as DTC and on the OTC as DTCFF. Learn more about Defence Therapeutics by going to the company's website, defensetherapeutics.com. For Money Talk Radio and the Ellis Martin Report, I'm Ellis Martin.